Michael Signer, what's a demagogue?
A demagogue is a mass leader. The book offers a four-part definition, which is one of the few times that anybody has actually defined demagogue for a while. I borrow the elements from an 1838 essay by James Fenimore Cooper, of all people, and they have four characteristics. They identify as a man of the people, or a person of the people, or the masses against the elites, usually. That's how they identify. The second one is they trigger great emotional reactions from the people. The third is they use those emotional reactions for personal or political benefit. And the fourth one, and this is the most important rule, they bend or break established rules of governance or of law.
Who would you define as an American demagogue?
Huey Long was probably the quintessential American demagogue. There have been many other examples, ranging from Daniel Shays, who was a revolutionary during the time of the Constitutional Convention. I think Joseph McCarthy, George Wallace. There have been David Duke, even in his little kind of burst in Louisiana, I think was a demagogue. And there have also been, in history, what I talk about in the book is beneficial demagogues. Paradoxically, you can have a demagogue if the definition is that they test established rules if the rules are unjust. There is actually a chapter of British history where demagogue was used as a term of praise. So you have some demagogues actually offer something to the people, and they can do good in a paradoxical way. But most of the time, the term accurately is a negative or harsh one to somebody who really does threaten systems that we hold dear.
Well, since you brought it up, what's an example of a good demagogue and why?
Lech Walesa, who was the head of Solidarity in Poland when they were overturning the regime of this kind of Soviet regime, I think was a beneficial demagogue. Boris Yeltsin at the very beginning in Russia was a beneficial demagogue. You've had then there are paradoxes. Huey Long was a very dangerous figure in American politics, but he also did pave highways and build public hospitals and build public schools and give textbook to kids. So his relationship to the people was rooted in part on his own ambition and on his sort of his boundless willingness to manipulate them for his own benefit, but it was also rooted in doing good things for thousands of people.
And the fight to save democracy from its worst enemies, the subtitle of your book. Who's fighting against whom?
It's a great question. The book is about constitutionalism. It follows the stories of 6 great thinkers who watched as democracy sort of stumbled around them and encountered there's a paradox called the cycle of regimes, where democracy will disintegrate into tyranny through a demagogue. That has haunted humanity since democracy first started being invented. That cycle is arrested when the people are committed to constitutionalism, when they're committed to a culture of Republican values, which requires a lot of individual citizens and which keeps any leader on a very short leash. So the book's title refers to the fight of people to save democracy from itself. So democracy can achieve extraordinary things, as we've seen in America, but demagogues can tap into people's willingness for something greater or different from a constitutional culture, and they can cause democracy to collapse in and of itself. And so that's the fight. The fight. Demagogues are democracy's own worst enemy.
Are there any contemporary issues where this conflict is going on?
Absolutely. Right now, one of the ironies of the Bush administration was democracy was made the #1 goal of the Bush foreign policy, the freedom agenda. This was announced in his second inaugural in January of 2005. And coincident with freedom being on the agenda was an eruption of demagogues around the world. We saw Hugo Chavez in Venezuela. You saw Muqtada al-Sadr, really, who was a cleric in Iraq, really make the first several years of the Iraq post-invasion society very, very, very dangerous by turning people against the state. Mahmoud Ahmadinejad was a demagogue in some ways. I think that he was not in the ways that he came to power, but in the threat that he posed to other countries. Hassan Nasrallah, who's the leader of Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, is a classic demagogue, and the list goes on.
Why did you write this book?
I wrote it out of a long-standing fascination with why democracy to me is probably the most beautiful and extraordinary thing we've come up with in society in the course of the human condition. But it suffers from a paradox, which is freedom, probably our most valuable gift. We can so easily let it go. And I have been, throughout my life, I've found Weimar Germany, what happened in Germany in the 1930s, where they had a quite beautiful and hopeful constitution, and the people of ordinary Germans handed their freedom over to Adolf Hitler through the lawful process, and then it was turned against them. That paradox, it turns out, wasn't just something that happened in Germany. It has gone through human history over and over and over again. It happened in France during the French Revolution, where you had, in a few short years, you had liberty, equality, fraternity were the goals, and then a few short years later, you have Robespierre and guillotines. As anybody who's seen Les Miserables knows, you know, in the Broadway version. And you have this paradox haunting history. And I was fascinated with that. How do you make democracy work? How do you make freedom not just live, but flourish? And how do you make people, ordinary people, hold it so dear that they prevent demagogues from preying on them? That's kind of the, and there is an answer. After years and years of thinking about it, there is an answer. And it is constitutionalism. And it turns out that political scientists have thought about it, historians have thought about it, political theorists have thought about it, philosophers. It's at the heart of, and I think it helps explain some of the majesty of the American victory over demagogues here. The number one fear of the founding fathers was that a demagogue would topple the Constitution and establish a tyranny here. And we have not seen that. Time and again, Americans and our constitutional culture has overcome our most pessimistic expectations of what might have happened. The classic example in the book is FDR when he tried to pack the courts in 1937 and take over the Supreme Court. The American people snapped back at him so hard that he had to, he tried to still pass the law anyway, but he was rebuffed by the people themselves.
What's your day job, and what did you do in the John Edwards campaign?
My day job, I'm currently a senior national security policy fellow at the think tank Third Way. I previously was at the Center for American Progress in Washington. I have been a long time, part of the book comes from a dissertation I wrote. I have a doctorate in political science as well as a law degree, and I've been a practicing lawyer and a professor. But I've also been a long time political activist and an activist on social justice issues, including electoral reform in Virginia, which is where I'm from, and issues dealing with democracy at a very local level. And that partly explains, I think, the fascination of the book. I was John Edwards' foreign policy advisor on his presidential campaign, where issues about how to restore America's moral authority and our might, which is rooted not in military strength, military strength helps, but it's rooted in the power of our ideas. We worked a lot on those issues in that campaign. I was very proud of the work that we did on global aid, the promotion of democracy, the expansion of some of the ideas that I propose in the book, and so those. It's a multi-layered book. It has a layer of political theory and one American history, and then one of foreign policy and national security.
Published by Palgrave Macmillan, Michael Signer is the author. Demagogue: The Fight to Save Democracy from Its Worst Enemies.